Toxic rage, the Viridium plague. The fluorescent hum of the laboratory lights was a constant, irritating companion, a stark contrast to the silence that had begun to consume Dr. Marcus Vex's own body. He leaned closer to the microscope, his breath misting faintly on the cool glass. Beneath the lens, his own cells, magnified 1,000-fold, pulsed with a sickening, erratic rhythm. They were dying. Not quickly, not violently, but with a slow, insidious consumption that felt like a betrayal from within. "My name is Marcus Vex," he whispered, the words raspy, barely audible even to himself. "Or what's left of it." His hand, usually steady, trembled as he adjusted the focus knob. The tremor wasn't from fatigue, it was the early, insidious sign of Vex decay, the rare, debilitating genetic disorder that was systematically dismantling his very being. Every joint ached, every muscle felt weaker than the day before. He was a man watching himself dissolve, molecule by agonizing molecule. The medical establishment had given it his name, a cruel irony for a biochemist who had dedicated his life to understanding and repairing the very building blocks of life. Incurable, they had said, their voices laced with pity, their eyes holding that familiar, grim finality. He remembered the last consultation, the doctor's hand gently, almost apologetically, resting on his hospital bed railing. "I'm so sorry, Elias," the doctor had murmured, mistaking Marcus for a moment in his file. "There's nothing more we can do." The words had echoed in the sterile room, a death knell. But Marcus refused to accept it. He was a scientist, a man who believed in solutions, in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. He had spent years, decades even, immersed in the intricate dance of cellular regeneration and accelerated evolution. Ether Solutions, the clandestine corporation that now employed him, had hired him for his brilliant mind, his audacious theories. They knew nothing of the ticking clock within him, the personal hell that fueled his relentless pursuit of the impossible. His gaze drifted from the microscope to the reinforced glass chamber dominating the center of his private high-security lab. Within it, suspended in a shimmering field, pulsed a small, intensely green element. It glowed with an almost otherworldly light, casting an ominous, vibrant hue across the cluttered space. This was Viridium, his obsession, his desperate hope. Marcus had discovered it years ago, an anomaly in a deep Earth core sample. He'd spent countless sleepless nights, fueled by caffeine and a desperate, manic energy, analyzing its properties. He hypothesized that Viridium, when properly stabilized and introduced to organic matter, could trigger rapid cellular repair, even enhance biological functions beyond anything known to science. It was volatile, unpredictable, a living enigma. But it was also, he believed, the answer. He approached the containment chamber, his reflection distorted in the thick glass, a gaunt, desperate specter. The green glow illuminated his face, highlighting the deep shadows under his eyes, the lines of exhaustion etched around his mouth. His eyes, however, held a burning, almost manic, determination. Hope and fear warred within them, a silent battle for his soul. "Viridium," he whispered again, the name a prayer, a curse. The ultimate catalyst. My salvation. Or my end. He knew the risks. He knew the ethical lines he was crossing, the corporate protocols he was bypassing. But the alternative was a slow, agonizing dissolution. And Marcus Vex, the man who defied the impossible, would not go quietly into that good night. The air in Marcus's private lab crackled with a nervous energy that mirrored the scientist's own escalating tension. Stripped down to a thin tank top, his gaunt frame was a roadmap of wires and electrodes, connecting him to a dizzying array of medical and scientific instruments. Monitors flickered with vital signs, cellular readouts, and complex Viridium stabilization matrices. A large, automated syringe mechanism, a marvel of his own design, hovered over his arm, a thick, translucent tube connecting it directly to the Viridium containment chamber. Sweat beaded on his brow, despite the lab's cool, controlled environment. His jaw was clenched, a muscle twitching rhythmically. "Just a small dose," he muttered, his voice tight, strained. "Controlled. Precise." He repeated the words like a mantra, trying to quell the rising tide of apprehension. Every calculation had been exhaustive, every variable accounted for. The stabilization matrix, the biofilters, the precise infusion rate, it had to work. There was no other option. His gaze, unwavering, fixed on the Viridium within its chamber. The green element pulsed, a living heart of pure, chaotic energy. As the automated system engaged, a portion of the Viridium was siphoned into the syringe. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the air, growing louder as the liquid inside the syringe began to glow with an ominous, vibrant green. It was beautiful, terrifying, and held the promise of everything he desired. The needle descended, a cold prick that quickly intensified into a searing burn as it pierced his skin. Marcus grimaced, a guttural sound escaping his lips, but his eyes remained fixed on the glowing liquid as it entered his arm. The burning intensified, spreading rapidly, a fire in his veins. But beneath the agony a strange sensation bloomed, a tingling, a warmth, a feeling of something happening. The sound of the Viridium entering his bloodstream was like a serpent's whisper. The burning, it's intense, he thought, his mind racing even as his body screamed. But it's working. I can feel it. And indeed it was. A dramatic, horrifying transformation began. Green, glowing veins, thick and pulsating, rapidly spread up his arm, visible beneath his skin, snaking their way towards his chest. The color was unnatural, alien, a vibrant, terrifying emerald that seemed to throb with a life of its own. Thump thump thump. His heart hammered in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the accelerating changes. The regeneration was instantaneous. Marcus's thoughts raced, a detached scientific observation even amidst the escalating horror. Unprecedented. But something was wrong. The Viridium, it wasn't just healing. It was changing me. The realization was a cold, stark terror. The carefully constructed matrix, the precise biofilters, the hours of calculations, they had failed. The Viridium, unbound, was rewriting him. And the rewrite was a nightmare. A scream tore from Marcus's throat, raw and primal, echoing off the sterile lab walls. His body arched violently, a grotesque contortion as the green energy, no longer contained, erupted from his skin. It formed flickering, chaotic tendrils, lashing out like venomous whips, sparking against the surrounding equipment. Monitors exploded in showers of glass and sparks. Flasks shattered, spilling their contents across the floor. The Viridium containment chamber, designed to withstand unimaginable forces, groaned under the strain, cracks spiderwebbing across its reinforced glass. Ewa! Marcus shrieked, his voice already deepening, distorting. It burns. It burns. The sounds of his transformation mingled with the destruction of his life's work. The transformation accelerated, merciless and absolute. His skin, once pale and sickly, hardened, turning a metallic, verdant green. It was no longer flesh but a living, armored shell. His eyes, once intelligent and analytical, became solid, glowing emerald orbs, devoid of human warmth. His teeth elongated, sharpening into predatory fangs. The Viridium chamber behind him, unable to withstand the backlash of its own unleashed power, finally gave way. With a deafening shatter, it exploded, bathing the lab in a blinding, malevolent green light. The matrix failed, Marcus's fractured thoughts whispered, the last vestiges of his scientific mind struggling for coherence. The Viridium, it became unbound. It wasn't just repairing. It rewrote every cell, every memory, every last shred of who I was consumed by the rage. A blinding explosion of vibrant green energy engulfed the entire laboratory. Debris flew outwards, propelled by an unseen force. The very air shrieked. For a moment, nothing was visible but pure, chaotic light, within which the monstrous silhouette of an armored figure was barely discernible. The sound was deafening, a cataclysmic roar that signaled the birth of something terrifying. When the smoke and settling debris finally began to clear, Elias Thorne, Dr. Marcus Vex, was gone. In his place, standing amidst the utterly annihilated laboratory, was a creature of nightmare. His posture was low, predatory, radiating an immense, raw power. Glowing green eyes, now twin infernos, pierced through the lingering haze. A guttural, echoing roar tore from his fanged maw, a sound of pure, untamed, destructive fury. The entity known as ToXic rage had been born. The facility's alarms blared, a useless, frantic wail against the unstoppable force that had just been unleashed. ToXic rage stood amidst the smoldering ruins of the lab, his armored form radiating heat and a faint, malevolent green glow. His fists were clenched, the newly formed claws gleaming in the dim light, and his entire being was a testament to pure, unadulterated fury. The air around him shimmered with residual Viridium energy, a palpable aura of destruction. Suddenly, 2 Ether Solutions security guards, clad in tactical gear, burst through a reinforced door, their weapons raised. Their faces, visible beneath their helmets, were a mixture of shock and dawning fear as they beheld the monstrous figure. Subject 734 is active, the first guard shouted into his comms, his voice cracking. Repeat, Subject 734 is. By all that's holy, what is that? The second guard whispered, his weapon trembling in his hands. ToXic rage turned, his glowing eyes fixing on them. With a primal roar that vibrated through the very foundations of the building, he unleashed a torrent of concentrated Viridium energy from his outstretched hand. The green blast was a living torrent, tearing through the guards and the reinforced wall behind them with horrifying ease, leaving a smoldering, jagged hole in its wake. The sounds of energy and rending metal echoed through the ruined lab. "Nu!" one guard screamed, his voice cut short as he was vaporized. Without a moment's hesitation, ToXic rage leaped through the newly created hole in the wall, a blur of green energy against the dark night sky. He left the burning, wrecked facility behind, a monument to Ether Solutions' hubris. They had sought to control the uncontrollable, to harness a power they barely understood. Now they would reap the whirlwind. He landed heavily in a dimly lit city alleyway, the impact echoing like a distant thunderclap. Steam rose from his body, his internal furnace still raging. Garbage cans were overturned, their contents spilling across the grimy pavement. A terrified rat scurried away, seeking refuge from the monstrous presence. The distant city lights twinkled, oblivious, the faint outlines of buildings a stark contrast to the immediate devastation. The concrete jungle offered little sanctuary. Only more noise, more irritation. The city's pulse, a cacophony of sirens and distant traffic, grated on his raw, Viridium-fueled senses. A police cruiser rounded the corner, its siren wailing, cutting through the night. Two officers, Officer Miller and Officer Williams, cautiously approached the alley, their flashlights cutting through the gloom, illuminating the towering, green-glowing figure. "All right, buddy, what's all this then?" Officer Miller called out, his voice attempting authority. "Put your hands where I can see 'em." Officer Williams, however, had seen enough. "Miller, wait, look at that thing." Her voice was laced with pure dread. ToXic rage turned, his glowing eyes locking onto the police car. With a primal roar that shook the very ground, he smashed the front of the cruiser with a single, powerful blow, crumpling the metal like paper. Officer Miller and Officer Williams recoiled in horror, their faces pale, their training momentarily forgotten. The police car is a mangled wreck, its lights flickering uselessly. ToXic rage stood over it, radiating menace, an unstoppable force unleashed upon an unsuspecting world. "Holy, what was that?" Officer Williams gasped, her voice trembling. "Get back! Get back!" Miller shouted, stumbling backward, reaching for his radio, knowing it was already too late. The rage was a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. ToXic rage rampaged down a busy city street, his every step a tremor, his every movement a destructive force. Cars were tossed aside like toys, their metal screeching, their windows shattering. Lampposts bent and snapped under his casual blows. Green energy flared around him, igniting pockets of the urban landscape. People scattered in terror, their screams swallowed by the growing cacophony of destruction. A bus, caught in his path, was overturned with a sickening crash, its passengers spilling out in a panic. The creature had no target, no objective beyond the pure, unadulterated fury that coursed through his Viridium-infused veins. He was chaos incarnate, a living embodiment of the element's volatile nature. From a safe distance, a news reporter, Brenda Chin, broadcast live, her face a mask of shock and fear. Behind her, a building burned, its flames licking at the night sky. Her microphone was clutched tightly in her trembling hand. "Unbelievable scenes here in downtown," she reported, her voice strained. "A monstrous, green-glowing entity is tearing through the city. Authorities have no explanation. We're being told to evacuate immediately." The city's defenses, unprepared for such a threat, were crumbling. A military helicopter, armed with heavy machine guns, appeared in the sky, its siren wailing, its powerful spotlight cutting through the gloom and fixing on ToXic rage. The rhythmic thud of rotor blades filled the air. "Target acquired," a pilot's voice crackled over the radio, distorted by static. "Engaging Subject 734. Repeat, engaging Subject 734. ToXic rage looked up at the helicopter, his glowing eyes narrowed, sensing the new threat, the new obstacle to his rage. With a defiant, guttural roar, he leaped, a green blur, streaking directly towards the approaching chopper. He was mid-air, a force of nature meeting a machine of war. His armored form collided with the side of the military helicopter. Metal shrieked and sparks flew as he ripped through the fuselage with his bare hands, tearing through the armored shell as if it were paper. "He's on us! He's on us!" A soldier screamed from inside the chopper, his voice filled with terror. Several heavily armed soldiers rappelled down from the damaged helicopter, opening fire on ToXic Rage. Bullets, a futile rain, pinged harmlessly off his armored body, leaving no mark. "It's no good. He's bulletproof," another soldier yelled, his voice laced with despair. ToXic Rage retaliated with a wide, sweeping blast of Viridium energy, a wave of pure green destruction that engulfed the soldiers. They screamed as their bodies glowed an unnatural green, their armor melting before they were sent flying like ragdolls, incinerated by the raw power. The blast tore through parts of the street and nearby vehicles, leaving smoking craters. "My eyes!" a soldier shrieked, his cry abruptly silenced. ToXic Rage stood triumphant amidst the wreckage of the helicopter and the burning street. His form crackled with green energy, and his posture radiated raw, destructive power. The military's attempts to contain him were futile. He was beyond their understanding, beyond their control. The creature known as ToXic Rage continued his destructive path, moving forward through the city. He's not running but walking with heavy, deliberate steps, each one causing the ground to tremble, each one a testament to his unstoppable force. Buildings crumble in his wake, their foundations cracking under the sheer weight of his Viridium-infused presence. The air grew thick with green-tinged smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal and decaying organic matter. The Rage was a singular, consuming entity, with no master, no agenda beyond the pure, unadulterated fury that coursed through his veins. Miles away in a secure, elevated position, perhaps a hidden surveillance van or a high-rise observation deck, Agent Kael watched the unfolding chaos on a bank of monitors. His sharp features were grim, etched with worry and exhaustion. He spoke into a secure comms device, his voice low and urgent. "Containment protocols are a complete failure," Kael reported, his gaze fixed on the thermal imaging of ToXic Rage's heat signature, a blazing green inferno against the city's dying pulse. "Casualties are mounting. We need to initiate Phase Gamma." "Phase Gamma is a last resort, Agent," a tiny voice responded over the comms, belonging to a high-ranking general. "The collateral damage." Kael's jaw clenched. He knew the cost. He knew what Phase Gamma entailed. But the alternative was unthinkable. He remembered the briefings, the sterile ether solutions conference rooms where the Viridium project had been discussed in hushed, excited tones. He remembered the holographic displays, the schematics of the volatile element, and the classified file labeled Subject 734, Marcus Vex. Dr. Thorne's work was promising, an ether solutions executive had stated calmly, almost clinically during one such briefing, but the Viridium is inherently unstable. Should it ever breach containment, it must be neutralized at all costs. Kael had dismissed it then, a contingency plan for an unlikely scenario. Now the unlikely was a horrifying reality. He looked at his own reflection in the monitor, his face hardened with grim determination. His eyes, usually sharp and analytical, were fixed on the distant destruction wrought by ToXic Rage, a green inferno against the night sky. "We created this monster," Agent Kael muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper. "And I'll be damned if we don't put it down." ToXic Rage, meanwhile, had found his throne. He stood atop the tallest skyscraper in the city, a dark, imposing silhouette against a burning skyline. Flames licked at the clouds and thick smoke billowed, tinted green by his presence. He radiated raw power, the Viridium energy crackling around his form, a crown of chaos. The city burned. A monument to a scientist's desperate gamble. A testament to a corporation's reckless ambition. An extreme close-up on ToXic Rage's face revealed his glowing green eyes burning with an infernal light. The fanged maw was open in a silent snarl, a mask of pure, untamed fury. The Rage had found its voice, a silent declaration of dominion over the fallen metropolis. The city was a landscape of fire and destruction. And with a final echoing roar that seemed to tear the very fabric of the night, ToXic Rage leaped from the skyscraper, a green comet streaking across the night sky, heading towards the horizon. Rearaf. The Rage had been unleashed. The city would never be the same. The dawn brought no solace. Only a stark, horrifying tableau of the night's terror. The city, once vibrant, was scarred, its wounds still smoking, a grotesque monument to the green plague that had swept through its streets. Smoke plumes, thick and acrid, rose into the pale morning sky, tinted an unsettling green in places where the Viridium's influence lingered. Buildings are charred, some partially collapsed, their skeletal remains reaching towards a sky that seemed to weep. Emergency vehicles, dwarfed by the scale of destruction, moved slowly through the rubble, their sirens a mournful dirge. On every news channel the story was the same. Brenda Chin, the news reporter, looked exhausted and grim, her face haggard from endless hours of broadcasting. The news chirun scrolled relentlessly, city under siege, unknown entity leaves devastation. Behind her, a looping video of ToXic Rage's rampage played silently, a horrifying reminder of the night's events. Authorities are still struggling to comprehend the scale of the destruction. Brenda's voice, somber and strained, filled the airwaves. Eyewitness accounts describe a green monster, a living inferno. The mayor has declared a state of emergency. In a makeshift triage center, set up amidst the chaos, paramedics moved with grim efficiency, tending to injured civilians. Some were covered in strange, glowing green residue, their skin taking on an unnatural, sickly green tint. A doctor, his face etched with worry, examined one such victim. "Get this patient into isolation," the doctor urged a nurse, his voice urgent. "The Viridium exposure is causing cellular necrosis. We're seeing accelerated decay." Through a broken window of a high-rise building, a silent observer could still see it. A distant, dark silhouette of ToXic Rage, perched atop the tallest skyscraper, a tiny, ominous speck against the pale, rising sun. He remained, a dark sentinel of chaos. And the city held its breath, waiting for his next move. Deep beneath the city, in a heavily fortified, underground bunker, the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. Agent Kael stood before a large tactical map, its holographic display showing the city above, a prominent red X, marking ToXic Rage's last known position on the skyscraper. Several Ether Solutions technicians and military personnel moved with a frantic urgency, their faces grim. "He's still there," Kael stated, his voice grave, pointing at the map. "Unmoving. But the Viridium contamination is spreading. We have less than 6 hours before the entire sector becomes uninhabitable." A holographic schematic of ToXic Rage's armored form shimmered on a nearby display. Data streams flowed across it, showing fluctuating energy readings and structural weaknesses. "Subject 734's energy output is fluctuating, sir," Technician 1 reported, his brow furrowed. "We're seeing spikes consistent with rapid cellular regeneration, but also internal instability. The Viridium is consuming him as much as it empowers him," Technician 2 added, his voice strained. "It's a feedback loop." Kael turned to a team of elite, black-clad Ether Solutions operatives. They were armed with specialized energy weapons and containment devices, their faces grim and determined as they stood at attention. Commander Rex, the leader of the team, met Kael's gaze. "Phase Gamma," Kael stated, his voice firm, leaving no room for doubt. "It's our only option. The neutralizer prototype is ready. It's designed to disrupt the Viridium's molecular bonds." Commander Rex's expression remained stern. "Sir, are we certain this won't just aggravate him further?" Dr. Vex's research indicated extreme volatility. Kael's face hardened, his resolve unyielding. "Marcus Vex is gone, Commander. All that remains is ToXic Rage. And if we don't stop him, there won't be a city left to save. Move out." He knew the gamble they were taking. Marcus Vex, his former colleague, a genius whose theories had once captivated him, was now a monster. But Kael couldn't shake the feeling that a flicker of the man remained, a desperate, tormented soul trapped within the green fury. He had to try. For the city. For Marcus. High above the ravaged city, ToXic Rage remained perched atop the skyscraper, a dark, malevolent sentinel. He was hunched slightly, green energy flickering around him more intensely than before, almost as if in a trance. His head was tilted as if listening to the city's dying pulse, or perhaps to something deeper within himself. A faint, almost ghostly image of Dr. Marcus Vex's face flickered, superimposed over his armored head, looking pained, tormented. The Viridium energy pulsed around him, erratic and unstable. The burning, it never stops, so much rage. Marcus's thoughts echoed, faint and distorted, a desperate whisper from the depths of the monster. A close-up on ToXic Rage's hand showed it clenching and unclenching, the green energy pulsing erratically. The internal struggle was immense, the Viridium's primal will warring with the last vestiges of Marcus's consciousness. They did this. Ether Solutions. Marcus's thoughts continued, more distorted now, fragments of memory fueling the monster's fury. Suddenly, ToXic Rage stood upright, a powerful surge of green energy erupting from him, causing the top of the skyscraper to crack further. His eyes glowed brighter, twin emerald suns. He seemed to sense something, a new presence, an approaching threat. Oh. The energy surge ripped through the air. Grr. ToXic rage growled, a low, guttural sound of warning. From a distance, a sleek, black, heavily armored VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, craft approached the skyscraper, its engines glowing blue, cutting through the dawn sky. It was the Ether Solutions containment team, a desperate gambit to neutralize the very thing they had created. The hunters approached their prey, unaware that the beast was already waiting. The VTOL hovered near the skyscraper. A ramp lowered, and Commander Rex, grim-faced and determined, led his team, rappelling down onto the rooftop. Their specialized energy weapons were aimed, ready to strike. Team Alpha deployed. Commander Rex's voice crackled into his comms. Target is stationary. Initiate neutralizer deployment sequence. ToXic rage turned abruptly, his glowing eyes locking onto the approaching team. He let out a guttural roar, green flames erupting from his fists, a challenge to their futile efforts. The team opened fire. Beams of blue energy generated by their specialized weapons streaked towards ToXic rage. He raised his arms, and a shield of pure green Viridium energy flared around him, deflecting the blasts with ease. Direct hit. No effect, an operative shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. ToXic rage lunged forward, a green blur. He was incredibly fast. Commander Rex barely had time to react, shouting a warning to his team. Brace for impact. ToXic rage engaged the team in close combat, a whirlwind of green energy and armored fists. He was a force of nature, unstoppable. One operative was sent flying through a concrete barrier, his body crumpling on impact. He's too strong, another operative yelled, scrambling backward. Commander Rex, a seasoned combatant, attempted to flank ToXic rage, firing his weapon at point-blank range. The neutralizer device, mounted on his weapon, glowed intensely, charging for its critical strike. Get the neutralizer on him. Now. Rex commanded, his voice strained. The neutralizer beam, a focused, pulsating blue light, struck ToXic rage directly in the chest. For a moment, the green energy around him flickered and dimmed. He stumbled back, a look of surprise, almost confusion on his face. The neutralizer hummed a high-pitched whine. The Viridium reacted with a serpentine whisper. Ugh. ToXic rage grunted, the sound raw. A close-up on ToXic rage's chest, where the beam had hit, revealed a faint, spiderweb-like crack on his green, armor-like skin. The glow beneath it was momentarily suppressed, a fleeting chink in his otherwise impenetrable defense. For a fleeting moment, the Viridium recoiled, a chink in the armor, a glimmer of hope. But that hope was short-lived. ToXic rage roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury that vibrated through the very air. The crack on his chest rapidly sealed itself, the Viridium regenerating with impossible speed. The green energy around him flared with renewed intensity, stronger than before, burning brighter, hotter. It's not working. He's adapting. Commander Rex yelled, his voice laced with despair. ToXic rage unleashed a massive omnidirectional pulse of Viridium energy. The force of it ripped through the rooftop, sending debris and the remaining operatives flying like ragdolls. The VTOL above, caught in the blast, was rocked violently, its engines sputtering. The massive energy pulse tore through the air. We're hit, an operative screamed, his voice cut short. The VTOL, heavily damaged, spiraled out of control, smoke trailing from its engines as it plummeted towards the city below. Agent Kael, watching from a distant monitor in the bunker, his face pale, slammed his fist on the console. What's happening? Kael demanded, his voice strained. Report. The neutralizer. It didn't disrupt the Viridium, Technician 1 reported, his voice filled with dread. It provoked it. It's accelerating its growth. ToXic rage stood amidst the ruined rooftop, his form now even larger, more imposing, crackling with raw power. The green flames around him were wilder, taller, licking at the sky. His eyes burned with an almost intelligent, vengeful fury. The cure had become the catalyst. The attempt to quell the rage had only stoked its fires. He descended from the skyscraper, not leaping but floating slowly, surrounded by a swirling vortex of green energy. ToXic rage was no longer merely a destructive force. He was a growing plague, his presence alone warping the very fabric of the city. The ground below him began to crack and glow green as he passed, the Viridium spreading like a virulent infection. The low hum of his power filled the air. Close-ups on the street below revealed the horrifying transformation. Asphalt cracked and sickly green vines, infused with viridium, rapidly sprouted from the fissures, twisting around abandoned cars and lampposts. The air shimmered with green motes, thick and suffocating. "What's happening to the city?" a civilian coughed, his voice hoarse with fear as he watched the grotesque flora consume his world. Toxic rage landed in a public park. The very ground seemed to recoil. Trees withered and turned black at his touch, then exploded into clouds of green dust. The grass transforms into a pulsating, toxic green sludge, bubbling and seeping into the pavement. "Mine, all mine." Toxic rage growled, a low, guttural sound of possessiveness. Agent Kael, now on the ground with a small, desperate team, witnessed the spreading contamination firsthand. His face was etched with horror, the reality of the situation far more dire than any simulation. "My God," Kael whispered, his voice trembling. "It's not just physical destruction. He's terraforming the city." Toxic rage approached a large, ornate city hall building, a symbol of the civilization he was dismantling. The viridium energy emanating from him caused the stone facade to crack and crumble, green tendrils snaking up its walls like parasitic veins. The rage sought a throne, a monument to its dominion. Inside the city hall, the mayor and his aides were frantically trying to evacuate, their faces pale with panic. They looked out a window, their eyes wide with terror as they saw the green blight approaching, consuming their last bastion of order. "We have to get out of here. Now!" the mayor screamed, pushing his aides towards an emergency exit. Toxic rage smashed through the main entrance of City Hall, leaving a gaping green-glowing hole in the ornate stonework. He strode inside, his form radiating immense power, the very air vibrating with his presence. He stood in the Grand Council chambers, once a place of governance and debate, now surrounded by the Viridium's corrupting influence. The room was bathed in an eerie, malevolent green light. He raised his armored fists, a silent declaration of conquest. The city had fallen. And the green plague had only just begun. The dawn of the third day brought no relief, only a new horrifying reality. The city, once a bustling metropolis, was now a new world, a monument to a single terrible force. The green plague had taken root, transforming the urban landscape into a grotesque, pulsating organism. What were once vibrant streets were now choked with pulsating green viridium tendrils, thick as tree trunks. Buildings were encrusted with the glowing substance, their structures groaning under the alien weight. The air was thick with green mist, suffocating and acrid, and the sun struggled to penetrate the viridium-infused clouds, casting the city in a perpetual, sickly twilight. A discarded, broken smartphone lay in the rubble, its screen flickering with a news report. Brenda Chen's face, distorted by static, filled the small display. The headline scrolled endlessly: "Evacuation failed, city declared lost." "All attempts to evacuate the remaining civilians have been repelled by the spreading viridium," Brenda's voice, distorted and somber, crackled from the phone. "The military has established a perimeter, but no one goes in or out. This city, it's a quarantine zone." Deep within a makeshift, dimly lit command center in a subway tunnel, Agent Kael stared at a monitor displaying thermal imaging of the viridium's relentless spread. He looked haggard, bruised, his face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. Empty coffee cups and discarded ration wrappers littered the table, testaments to the sleepless nights. "Lost?" Kael muttered to himself, his voice low, filled with a grim defiance. "Not yet. Not while there's a breath left in me." A military general, stern and unyielding, appeared on a comm screen, his face grim, his eyes hard. "Agent Kael, our window is closing," the general's voice boomed over the comms. "We're authorizing the orbital bombardment in T-12 hours. It's the only way to sterilize the viridium before it spreads globally." Kael's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. "Sir, with all due respect, that will glass the entire city. And Dr. Vex." The general's voice cut him off, unmoved. "We cannot risk global contamination for one man. You have 12 hours. Find a solution or we will." Kael slammed his fist on the table, knocking over a cup. The metallic clang echoed in the cramped bunker. He looked around at his small, exhausted team, their faces reflecting his own despair. Damn it, there has to be something in his research. Something he hid. He hunched over a laptop, furiously typing. On the screen, complex biochemical formulas and schematics flashed by, covered in Dr. Marcus Vex's frantic handwritten notes. Kael was accessing a deeply encrypted file, a hidden layer of Marcus's research. He knew Marcus Vex was a genius, Obsessive, yes, but brilliant. He wouldn't have left himself without an exit, a failsafe. The laptop screen glowed, illuminating Kael's determined face. His finger traced a specific, intricate formula on the display, labeled Stabilization Matrix Phase 4 Theoretical. It was a complex web of resonant frequencies and molecular harmonics, far beyond anything ether solutions had openly pursued. The counterfrequency, the resonant harmonic. Kael whispered, a spark of desperate hope igniting in his eyes. He was trying to control it, not just contain it. A memory flickered in Kael's mind, a fleeting image of a younger, healthier Marcus Vex in his pristine lab, excitedly gesturing at a diagram of the Viridium. The Viridium isn't just an element, Kael, Marcus's voice, enthusiastic and vibrant, echoed in the memory. It's a living, evolving organism at a subatomic level. To fight it is to fight nature itself. To understand it, that's where the true power lies. Back in the present, Kael looked up from the screen, the memory solidifying his conviction. He wasn't trying to destroy it. He was trying to harmonize with it. If we can introduce a counterfrequency, a resonant vibration. He pointed to a technician, his voice urgent, infused with a newfound purpose. Give me a power source. Something that can generate a focused, high-frequency sonic pulse. We need to build a Viridium stabilizer. Above ground, ToXic Rage still stood atop City Hall, seemingly in a trance, drawing power from the corrupted city. The green storm clouds above him swirled violently, mirroring the chaos below. A ghostly, transparent image of Dr. Marcus Vex's face flickered, superimposed over ToXic Rage's armored head, looking pained, tormented. He clutched his head, a desperate struggle for control. No, not this, the pain, the wrongness, stop. Marcus's thoughts, fragmented and pained, echoed from within the monster. ToXic Rage recoiled slightly, a jolt of green energy sparking from his body. The Viridium growths around him momentarily falter. He snarls as if fighting an internal battle against the lingering humanity. Silence. My rage. ToXic Rage bellowed, his voice distorted, asserting dominance. The ghostly image of Marcus faded, replaced by the pure, unadulterated fury of ToXic Rage. He reasserted control, and the Viridium around him surged with renewed, malevolent power. The man fought the monster, but the monster was winning. In the makeshift subway bunker, the team worked frantically. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting humming power cells to a large, oddly shaped device with a prominent sonic emitter. It looked makeshift, cobbled together from scavenged parts, but it pulsed with a raw, contained power. Power cells are online. Technician 1 shouted, wiping sweat from his brow. Calibrating the resonant frequency now, Agent. We have less than an hour before the military's deadline. Agent Kael urged, his voice tight with urgency. The sonic emitter began to glow with a faint, steady blue light, a stark contrast to the oppressive green that permeated the city above. A low WIR filled the bunker, the sound of hope humming to life. Kael, now clad in a specialized, armored suit with a clear visor, prepared to deploy. He carried the Viridium stabilizer device, its blue light a beacon in the dimness. His face was grim but determined. He knew the stakes. This is a one-shot. If it doesn't work. He paused, looking at a small, framed photo on his desk, a younger, smiling Marcus Vex before the decay, before the rage. I'm coming for you, Marcus. One way or another. Above, ToXic Rage remained atop City Hall, seemingly in a trance, drawing power from the corrupted city. The green storm clouds above him swirled violently, a reflection of his dominion. The city's pulse, a low THUM, emanated from the Viridium-choked streets. A small, agile ether solutions drone, modified to be stealthy, approached City Hall. It carried Agent Kael, who was tethered to it, a tiny figure barely visible against the green-tinged sky. Approaching target, Kael whispered into his comms, his voice low. Minimal resistance. He's distracted. Kael detached from the drone and landed silently on the Viridium-encrusted rooftop, just a few yards from the colossal figure of ToXic Rage. The ground squelched sickeningly under his boots, a living, breathing carpet of corruption. He raised the Viridium stabilizer, its blue light cutting through the oppressive green. This is it, Kael thought, his heart pounding. ToXic Rage slowly turned his head, his glowing eyes fixing on Agent Kael. A low, menacing growl rumbled from his chest. He sensed the intrusion, the foreign energy. Intruder? ToXic Rage rumbled, his voice deep and menacing. Kael activated the Viridium stabilizer. A focused beam of pure resonant blue light shot from the device, striking ToXic rage directly in the chest, precisely where the neutralizer had failed. The stabilizer's pulse vibrated through the air. ToXic rage recoiled violently, screaming. The green energy around him flickered erratically, and the Viridium growths on City Hall began to glow brighter, then dim, then glow again as if fighting the counter-frequency. The Viridium reacted, a violent, desperate struggle. No. The pain. ToXic rage shrieked, his voice filled with torment. The ghostly image of Marcus Vex's face reappeared over ToXic rage, clearer this time, looking horrified but also strangely aware. He reached out a spectral hand towards Kael, a silent plea. Kael? Marcus's thoughts echoed clearer now. What have you done? ToXic rage's body began to convulse. The green armor cracked and glowed intensely as if about to explode. The Viridium energy around him becomes unstable, swirling inwards, a vortex of self-destruction. Caracom. The building energy built to a crescendo. It's working. Agent Kael shouted, the strain visible on his face as he poured all the device's power into the monster. But it's overloading. The Viridium stabilizer began to spark and smoke in Kael's hands, its components straining under the immense energy output. He gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face, his muscles screaming in protest. Hold on, Marcus. Fight it. Kael yelled, his voice raw with desperation. ToXic rage let out a final agonizing roar, a sound of pure, unadulterated torment. The green energy surrounding him imploded inwards, then burst outwards in a blinding flash of emerald light that engulfed the entire rooftop. The localized explosion rocked the very foundations of the building. When the dust settled, the Viridium growths on City Hall had receded, leaving behind charred, blackened stone. ToXic rage was gone. In his place, lying unmoving amidst the debris, was a figure covered in a thin, sickly green residue. It was Dr. Marcus Vex, gaunt and unconscious, but undeniably human again. The Viridium stabilizer lay shattered beside him, its purpose fulfilled. The sound of falling debris was the only sound. Marcus? Kael whispered, panting, exhausted as he stumbled towards the prone figure. Close up on Marcus Vex's face. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing his normal human eyes, but they were filled with a deep, profound horror. He looked at his hands, then at the still smoking green-tinged city, the devastation he had wrought. The plague, what have I done? Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse, filled with guilt. The Viridium growths were slowly receding, turning to dust, dissipating into the air. The green mist that had choked the streets began to thin, and the sky slowly returned to its normal color, a pale, bruised blue. The city was still devastated, a landscape of broken buildings and scorched earth, but the active threat was gone. The immediate plague was neutralized. The Viridium receded, leaving behind a city scarred, but no longer actively consumed. Agent Kael helped awaken Marcus Vex to his feet. Marcus stumbled, his body frail, his mind reeling from the horrors he had witnessed and inflicted. He looked at the vast destruction he had caused, tears welling in his eyes, the weight of his actions crushing him. All those lives, the city? Marcus murmured, his voice choked with despair. Kael placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of weary comfort. We'll rebuild Marcus, but first we need to understand. A military transport helicopter approached, its rotors thrumming, a stark reminder of the world's judgment. The general's grim face was visible through the cockpit window, looking down at Marcus and Kael with a complicated expression. Relief mixed with suspicion. Agent Kael. Dr. Vex. Prepare for extraction. The general's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, distorted but clear. We have much to discuss. Marcus Vex, looking haunted, was led onto the helicopter by Agent Kael. Behind them, the damaged but no longer actively corrupted City Hall stood, a silent witness to the ordeal. The sun began to fully break through the clouds, casting long shadows. But in the shadows, a faint, almost imperceptible green shimmer remained in the air, a reminder. The rage was contained. But the Viridium, it was still out there. Waiting. And the true cost of Marcus Vex's ambition was yet to be paid. Days turned into weeks. The city slowly began to breathe again, the green plague receding like a nightmare. Cleanup crews in hazmat suits worked tirelessly, clearing debris and spraying decontamination agents. The Viridium growths were gone, but the scars of destruction were evident everywhere. Scorched earth, crumbling buildings, a landscape forever altered. The city was healing, but the questions remained. Deep within a sterile, white interrogation room, Marcus Vex sat at a metal table, looking utterly drained. His clothes were simple, institutional, a stark contrast to the lab coat he once wore. Across from him sat Ms. Evelyn Reynolds, an Ether Solutions executive, impeccably dressed, her posture rigid, her expression stern and unyielding. Agent Kael stood silently in the corner, observing, his presence a quiet tension in the room. Dr. Vex. Or should I say Subject 734? Ms. Reynolds began, her voice cold, devoid of emotion. The city is in ruins. Lives were lost. And it all traces back to your unauthorized experiments. Marcus's hands, clenched tightly on the table, trembled. He couldn't bring himself to look at her. The guilt was a crushing weight. I was trying to save myself, he murmured, his voice hoarse, filled with profound regret. To save others from the same fate. I never intended. Ms. Reynolds leaned forward, her eyes glinting with a predatory, calculating light. Intention is irrelevant, Doctor. The fact remains, you unleashed an unprecedented biological weapon. But you also contained it. Tell us, Dr. Vex. Oh, and more importantly, can you replicate it? Kael's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of concern for Marcus. He knew Reynolds's true agenda, the corporate greed that lay beneath the veneer of concern for national security. Ms. Reynolds, Dr. Vex's condition is fragile. He's been through a traumatic experience. Reynolds dismissed Kael with a wave of her hand, not breaking eye contact with Marcus. Agent, your concern is noted. But national security takes precedence. Dr. Vex, the Viridium is a resource. A highly volatile one, yes, but a resource nonetheless. Imagine its applications: energy, medicine, defense. Her voice took on a silky, persuasive tone, a dangerous allure. Marcus finally looked up, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and despair. It's a plague. A living, sentient force of destruction. You saw what it did. You want to harness that. You're insane. Reynolds's smile was cold, calculating. Insane, Dr. Vex? Or simply, pragmatic? We believe with your unique insight we can stabilize it. Control it. Perhaps even weaponize it. Marcus pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. His voice rose in intensity, fueled by a desperate need to make them understand. You don't understand. The Viridium isn't just a chemical. It has consciousness. A primal, destructive rage that consumes everything. It almost consumed me. A horrifying memory flashed through his mind, a vivid, terrifying echo of his internal struggle within the monster, the ghostly Marcus fighting the overwhelming green fury. He could still hear the primal roar of the Viridium's will. I felt it. Marcus's voice, though physically weak, resonated with the terror of that memory. Its hunger. Its fury. It wanted to twist the world into its own image. Reynolds stood, her expression hardening, her patience wearing thin. That's enough, Doctor. Your subjective experiences are irrelevant. We need data. Hard science. And you will provide it or face the consequences. Marcus was led away by two silent, imposing guards, their faces devoid of emotion. He glanced back at Kael, a desperate, silently pleading look in his eyes. Kael met his gaze, a soundless promise passing between them. They wanted his knowledge. They wanted his monster. And Marcus knew with a chilling certainty that he couldn't let them have either. Later, Agent Kael walked through a sterile corridor of the Ether Solutions facility, the silence oppressive after the chaos of the city. He pulled out a secure comms device, his face etched with worry. This is Kael. I need an update on the Viridium residue samples from Sector Gamma. Anything unusual? In a clean room, a technician in a full hazmat suit examined a petri dish under a microscope. The dish contained a tiny, almost imperceptible green speck, a remnant of the plague. Agent, we're seeing anomalous activity, the technician's voice crackled over the comms, staticky. The residue isn't inert. It's dormant. But it's reacting to ambient energy signatures. Growing. Slowly. Kael's face twisted into a look of dawning horror as he heard the report. He knew what that meant. It's not just about Marcus. It's still out there. And they're trying to wake it up. Inside a secure, high-tech laboratory within the Ether Solutions facility, scientists in hazmat suits moved around a large, reinforced chamber. Inside, a small, contained sample of Viridium glowed with a faint green light, pulsating. It was being subjected to various energy frequencies, coaxed and prodded. Increasing energy output to 300%, the first scientist reported, adjusting controls. Observing Viridium response. Minor expansion noted, a second scientist confirmed. still not achieving Marcus Vex's Phase 4 resonance. Ms. Reynolds watched from a viewing gallery, a satisfied smirk on her face. She saw not a threat but an opportunity. Keep pushing. Dr. Vex may be uncooperative, but his research is clear. The Viridium can be controlled. And when it is, ether solutions will control the future. Meanwhile, Marcus Vex, confined to his cell, watched a news report on a small wall-mounted screen. The report showed images of the city's slow recovery, but also mentions the ongoing environmental anomalies in certain quarantine zones. He clenched his fists, a cold dread seeping into his bones. They're playing with fire, Marcus muttered to himself. They don't know what they're dealing with. He looked at his hands. A faint, almost invisible green shimmer appeared for a split second on his skin, then vanished. He quickly hid his hands, a look of fear and determination on his face. The Viridium was a part of him now. Dormant, yes, but never truly gone. And perhaps, that was his only hope. Later, Agent Kael approached Marcus's cell, moving stealthily, a small, disguised device clutched in his hand. Marcus. It's Kael, he whispered through the intercom, his voice low. They're trying to replicate your work. They're pushing the Viridium. Marcus's eyes widened. He moved closer to the cell door, his voice urgent. They'll unleash it again. Worse than before. It's not a weapon to be controlled, Kael, it's a force of nature. Kael slid the small device under the cell door. It was a miniature, modified version of the Viridium stabilizer, disguised as a data chip. I found a way to bypass their security. This device, it's a frequency emitter. It can disrupt their experiments, but you'll need to get close. Marcus picked up the device, his fingers tracing its familiar contours. He looked at Kael, a new resolve in his eyes, but also a profound weariness. And if I fail? If the rage takes over again? Then we'll deal with it together, Kael replied, his voice firm. But right now, you're the only one who can stop them from making a bigger monster. A click, almost imperceptible, echoed in the sterile silence of the corridor. Marcus, using his scientific knowledge and a surprising burst of strength, a subtle, unconscious Viridium influence perhaps, had managed to disable the cell's locking mechanism. He slipped out, his movements quiet, urgent. He had to do this. For the city, for everyone. He moved through the sterile corridors of the Ether Solutions facility, a labyrinth of secrets he knew intimately. He navigated, avoiding security cameras and patrols, moving with a quiet urgency towards the Viridium Research Lab. The facility was a labyrinth of secrets. But Marcus had built much of it, he knew its hidden paths well. He reached the heavy reinforced door to the Viridium Lab. 2 guards stood outside, their posture relaxed, oblivious to the impending chaos. Marcus took a deep breath, preparing himself. His heart hammered in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. He burst through the door, surprising the guards. He didn't engage them in a direct fight. Instead, he used a quick, almost preternatural burst of speed, a subtle green shimmer around him, to disarm them with a swift, fluid motion, slipping past them into the lab. Hey. What? One guard yelled, his voice cut short as he stumbled. Inside the lab, the contained Viridium sample is glowing intensely, pulsating faster, its energy building. The scientists, now alarmed, frantically worked at their consoles. It's reaching critical mass. We're losing containment, the first scientist shouted, his voice strained. The energy spikes are off the charts. The second scientist added, fear in his eyes. Marcus rushed towards the containment chamber, the small frequency emitter clutched in his hand. Ms. Reynolds, who had been observing from a viewing platform, turned, her face contorted in anger and disbelief. Vex. What are you doing? She screamed. Stop him. Marcus ignored her. He activated the emitter. A focused, blue sonic wave blasted from the device, hitting the Viridium containment chamber. The Viridium inside recoiled violently, its green glow flickering, fighting the counter-frequency. Boom. The emitter blasted. The Viridium shrieked. The Viridium sample, instead of being contained, suddenly explodes outwards, shattering the chamber. The green energy washes over Marcus, engulfing him in a blinding flash. No! Ms. Reynolds screamed, her voice filled with despair. From the center of the explosion, the monstrous form of ToXic rage emerged once more. He was larger, more menacing than ever, crackling with raw, untamed Viridium energy. His eyes burn with furious green light, twin infernos of pure rage. The lab is utterly destroyed around him, a landscape of twisted metal and shattered glass. ToXic rage roared, his voice deeper, more powerful, a primal scream of liberation. Ms. Reynolds, frozen in terror, watched from her platform, her eyes wide with shock and dawning horror. What have I done?" she whispered, trembling, the full weight of her ambition's consequence crashing down on her. ToXic rage turned his glowing eyes towards Ms. Reynolds. A surge of green energy erupted from his hands, tearing through the lab equipment between them, a direct expression of his fury. "You played God." ToXic rage growled, his voice a distorted echo of Marcus's accusation. Reynolds barely rolled out of the way as the energy blast incinerated the floor where she was moments before. She scrambled to her feet, desperate to escape, her composure utterly shattered. "Get security. All units. Neutralize Subject 734. More Ether Solutions security guards, heavily armed, burst into the lab. They opened fire on ToXic rage, but their bullets spark harmlessly off his armored form, leaving no mark. "Open fire. Don't let it escape," the guard captain shouted, his voice desperate. ToXic rage unleashed a sweeping wave of Viridium energy engulfing the guards. They screamed as their armor melted and their bodies glowed an unnatural green before collapsing, consumed by the plague. "Fools!" ToXic rage bellowed, his voice resonating with contempt. ToXic rage strode through the facility, leaving a trail of Viridium-corrupted wreckage in his wake. Walls cracked and glowed green as he passed, the very structure of the building succumbing to his presence. Alarms blared throughout the complex, a useless cacophony against the unstoppable force. The facility, designed to contain the world's most dangerous secrets, had become a cage for its own monster, and the monster was breaking free. Agent Kael, battered but determined, moved quickly through the ruined corridors, trying to intercept ToXic rage. He fired his heavy-duty energy rifle, a focused blue beam striking the creature's back. "Marcus, stop this!" Kael shouted, his voice strained. ToXic rage barely flinched. He turned slowly, his glowing eyes fixing on Kael, a cold, predatory menace in their depths. The green energy around him intensified, a warning. "Kael, tried to cage me?" ToXic rage rumbled, his voice low and menacing, a twisted echo of Marcus's past. He unleashed a focused blast of Viridium energy. Kael barely activated a personal energy shield, which shimmers and strains under the immense impact. He was thrown backward, crashing into a wall, the air knocked from his lungs. "Ugh." Kael grunted in pain, his body aching. ToXic rage continued his destructive path towards the surface. He smashed through reinforced doors and walls, creating gaping, glowing green holes, his singular purpose to be free. The rage was purer now, unburdened by the fragile humanity of Marcus Vex. It had a singular purpose, to be free. Ms. Reynolds, disheveled and terrified, watched from a hidden camera feed as ToXic rage approached the main exit. Her face was pale, her terror absolute. "Seal the outer blast doors," she screamed to a remaining technician, her voice high-pitched. "Initiate full lockdown. He cannot reach the surface." ToXic rage reached the massive multi-layered blast doors. He placed his hands on them, and the Viridium energy surged, causing the thick metal to glow green, then buckle and melt under the sheer force. "Imprison. No. More." ToXic rage bellowed, his voice filled with a terrifying resolve. A blinding flash of green light erupted as ToXic rage blasted through the final door, emerging onto the surface. The sky above is the familiar, smoggy city sky, now witness to his return. And with a final, defiant roar, the monster returned to the world. ToXic rage stood atop a wrecked Ether Solutions transport vehicle, just outside the now-ruined facility entrance. He raised his arms, and a wave of potent green energy pulsed outwards, causing the ground to crack and Viridium growths to erupt around the complex. A wide shot of the city, still recovering from the previous outbreak, revealed new localized outbreaks of Viridium-infused decay beginning to appear. Small green flares erupted in different districts, like cancerous blooms. The plague returned, stronger, more virulent, and this time it felt deliberate. Agent Kael, having recovered from the blast, emerged from the ruined facility entrance. He looked at the spreading green blight with despair, a chilling realization dawning on him. "He's not just rampaging," Kael muttered to himself. "He's planting it, he's spreading the Viridium like a disease." He pulled out his comms device, his expression grim, knowing the terrible truth he had to convey. "This is Agent Kael. To all remaining units, to the General, to anyone listening. ToXic rage has escaped, and he's worse than before." ToXic rage moved through the city, now actively targeting infrastructure. He smashed power lines, causing cascading blackouts. He caused water mains to burst, flooding streets with contaminated water. He systematically corrupted public spaces with Viridium, twisting parks into grotesque, pulsating green nightmares. The chaos is escalating rapidly, a systematic dismantling of civilization. The city's fragile recovery shattered. The Green Plague was back and it was systematically dismantling civilization. A military blockade, tanks and armed soldiers, attempted to stop ToXic rage. He charged them head-on, a living green battering ram, utterly impervious to their weapons. Open fire. Open fire, a soldier screamed, firing his rifle in a futile gesture. ToXic rage tore through the blockade, flipping tanks like toys and incinerating soldiers with blasts of Viridium energy. He was utterly unstoppable, a force of nature unleashed. Resistance, futile. ToXic rage bellowed, his voice filled with contemptuous power. A news helicopter hovers precariously, filming the unfolding disaster, its camera capturing every horrifying detail. Brenda Chen's voice, now tinged with hysteria, crackled over the comms. The creature now being called ToXic rage by authorities has returned. Brenda reported, her voice breaking. The military's efforts are proving useless. The city is falling again. ToXic rage stood in the center of a major intersection, surrounded by burning vehicles and Viridium-infested wreckage. He raised his arms to the sky, a silent, terrifying declaration of dominance. The city was his. A festering, green wound on the face of the earth, and no one could stop him. He moved with a grim, purposeful intent, spreading the Viridium far and wide. Each step was a tremor, each breath a toxic cloud. The city groaned under his dominion, its very essence being rewritten by the Green Plague. The air grew heavy, thick with the sickly sweet scent of decay and the pulsating hum of the Viridium. As ToXic rage continued his reign far away on the outskirts of the city, in a dark, grimy, abandoned warehouse district, rain lashed down, reflecting the neon glow of distant fires. The air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and decay. Inside one of the derelict warehouses, a figure was huddled in the deepest shadows. It was a young man, thin and disheveled, clearly injured, shivering uncontrollably. He clutched a crudely bandaged arm and fresh blood seeped through the cloth. His eyes were hollow with hunger and fear, darting nervously around the oppressive darkness. Nowhere left to run? He whispered, his voice hoarse, utterly devoid of hope. He was Leo Maxwell, a casualty of the city's fall, trapped and waiting for the inevitable. But then, from the deepest shadows of the warehouse, a dark, viscous, almost oil-like substance began to ooze across the concrete floor. It moved slowly, silently, a living shadow. It was entirely black, with faint, unsettling reddish-purple highlights that pulsed with an inner, predatory life. It was clearly not Viridium. It was something else, something ancient, something hungry. Slither. The sound was barely audible, yet it filled the silence. The black, viscous substance reached Leo Maxwell's foot. He looked down, his eyes widening in confusion, then fear as it began to creep up his leg, enveloping his ankle, then his calf. It moved with an unnatural speed, flowing over his skin, drawn to the warmth, to the life with. It enveloped his hand, then his entire body. He cried out, a mix of pain and shock as the cold alien substance consumed him. It pulsed, and faint, almost vein-like patterns appeared within its blackness, glowing with that unsettling reddish purple. The entire figure was now almost completely covered by the black substance, which was forming a crude, powerful-looking shadowy outline around him. Only his eyes, now glowing with a faint, unsettling red, were visible, burning with a new, terrifying light. Pulse, 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 pulse. The sound was stronger now, deeper, resonating from within the transforming figure. Power? Leo's voice, distorted and echoing, emerged from the shadowy form, a single word of desperate, newfound strength. Back in the heart of the city, ToXic rage stood triumphant amidst the burning, green-tinged landscape. He let out a final, echoing roar of victory, unaware of the new, dark force that had just been born. My world. As the Green Plague consumed, a new darkness rose. A different kind of monster. Born of desperation. Forged in the shadows. And soon, it would scourge. The story continues in Blood Scourge, Origins.